I'd say there's at least 10 things that you should think about, before buying an AV system. And some of the things, we can talk about will include, the infrastructure in place and the needs and wants. So let's start with number one, identifying a qualified audiovisual integrator that you want to purchase from. I think that's important. Infinite Audiovisual is a certified reseller of a lot of different technologies. And in order to be a certified reseller of these technologies, we've gone through training with different manufacturers. We've gone through vendor neutral training and certification testing to become well-versed with a lot of different technologies. And we keep up with these technologies as well. So, myself and other individuals on our team are AVIXA certified. So CTS, CTSD, that's a certified technology specialist with a design credential. And that really is something that gave me a lot of information and helped me qualify to be a good designer and good reseller of products. I've also become certified in Crestron and Extron, like a lot of our other installers and AV engineers are as well. So those are two of the key control systems for AV, in the modern day. So that's important, making sure you have a qualified reseller to purchase from. Next, I'll talk about the AV needs and wants. So, let's talk about what is needed versus what, maybe a maybe or just desired feature of the AV system. If you're talking about building out a conference room, you're going to, maybe the need is you need a display, you need a video conferencing camera, you need speakers and microphones, the basics, right? Those are needs, must-haves. The wants might be, we want a 4K display on the wall versus a 1080 display, or we want ceiling speakers that are mounted in the ceiling rather than, on the wall. We want touch panels on the table so that we can start our meetings. Those are things that may not necessarily be a need, but they may be a want. And I think it's important to define the differences between those two things and really brainstorm. And this is helping define how the room must be built out, and then some of the features that may be good to have. Next point I'll make is considering the users, right? Consider the users are going to be using this room on a daily basis. There may be technical, companies or technical departments that want to have a more technical system that is adjustable, has some controls, and we want to consider that versus, the user that might not want to adjust anything. They just want to come into the room and make it work with a touch of a button or plugging in a cable, and it turns on and everything works the same time every time. So that's something to consider. Considering the existing space. So if we're talking about conference rooms or training rooms or all hands spaces, you want to consider how big this space is, right? So is it a 3-person huddle room, or is this a medium-sized conference room, a boardroom where 20 people might be occupying this room, or training spaces and all hands spaces can be much larger, spaces where you have, 50, 100 people. And those all make a big difference in how the system is designed and in your decision to purchase the right equipment. So, that's definitely a big consideration. We'll talk about scalability, right? Scaling this system. So, maybe that you want to start out and build a system that just meets your needs, but later on you maybe want to swap things out that will also be additional features that are wanted, and I think that's important to consider as well. Infinite Audiovisual can help determine, what systems are going to allow scalability and what are systems that you may want to stay away from because they're not going to be upgradable in the future or not going to be able to be compatible with future systems. So I think that's important to think about. And, that rolls right into compatibility. That's the next point to make is, if there's existing infrastructure in place, we want to make sure that the new system hardware is compatible. And a lot of the projects and customers, we'll work with will have existing infrastructure in place. Maybe they have displays on the wall already, and they want to keep those displays rather than replace them. Maybe they have existing speakers or microphones in place and they like those as well. So we'll make sure that if that's one of the customer's requirements is to keep existing infrastructure, maybe to keep the budget down, we can make sure that we're designing the new infrastructure that is compatible with the existing infrastructure. A couple other things to consider here. So load. So what is the electrical load on the equipment, and what is the requirements for network bandwidth? So when we're talking about electrical load, a lot of cases, small conference rooms, medium conference rooms, not a big deal. It's just a couple devices, maybe a computer unit that doesn't draw too much power. In some of the larger rooms, when you're dealing with like amplifiers and a lot of high-powered speakers and components, you want to consider the load that's being drawn on the circuits. And in some cases, you might need a dedicated circuit for the system. And that's something that we can determine. Infinite Audiovisual is, we're an electrical contractor. We understand electrical very well. And we also understand what are the requirements for the electrical on these systems. So, and I also mentioned network bandwidth, right? So it's important to think about how much bandwidth these video conferencing systems draw. We've seen problems where, say in an office you have, between, 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, there's a lot of video conferencing meetings scheduled in the office. Well, all of a sudden, the wireless bandwidth in that office just goes down to nothing. And people that are working in workstations don't have internet, connectivity anymore. And it's really slow and laggy. And that was due to all the video conferencing systems say, 10 or 20 conference rooms on this floor were all set up on wireless. They weren't connected through an Ethernet network cable. And that is something we can help identify. We can help make sure that we're designing the rooms appropriately and setting up the systems so that we know what the network bandwidth is required, what the requirements are, and we make sure that they're set up correctly. So that's important. Let's see, other things I have, on my list to consider. Serviceability. Serviceability is important. That is, something that I would say is often overlooked. And, depending on how complex your system is, it could be really easily serviced, or it may be pretty complex and you may need a specialist to come out, if something goes wrong. So we can help make sure that that's well understood. If the system is an easy, come in and works the same way every time, maybe it's not touched very much and it's just, we've helped create a user training, so that our customers can, work with their users and make sure that they're using it consistently every time to prevent, the servicing requirements. In other, instances where we've come into existing systems, the systems can be very high touch and they require a lot of settings to be changed, to set up the meetings, cables to be plugged or unplugged to set up meetings differently in the same space. In those rooms, you're going to find that there's a lot of issues, right? There's, the IT department is getting calls every day because somebody unplugged the wrong cable, and maybe somebody changed the settings on the microphones or the speakers, and all of a sudden they're not functioning properly and users are stressed out. So we want to help out, our customers, make sure that they understand how to convey the correct way that their users should be using the systems to prevent unnecessary, service requests. So that's important too. I can talk about future proofing your investment. And so future proofing your AV investment is a difficult thing to do in this day and age. You have a lot of technologies that are constantly changing and evolving, a lot of improvements are constantly happening. As an example, like HD displays were, cutting edge technology when they first came out. And then just a few years later, you have UHD, which is like 4K displays. And, those are things that we can help you determine whether just, a standard HD or UHD is a good purchase for the use of that display. And Infinite Audiovisual can help design and it can help with the needs assessment for a lot of different AV systems and experiences. We help customers design and procure equipment for their conference rooms, for video walls and digital signage, for a lot of different spaces like all hands and training rooms where the AV equipment is used differently for different purposes. So we're glad to work with new customers on assessing what their needs are, and we do offer free consulting to our customers and potential customers to help them figure out what's needed and what's wanted.